Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back into Untitled. So happy to have you here with us. The start of June, we got a lot of things to talk about. Kendall Valenzuela here with you today. And we don't have Amanda, aka Cooter Doodle, to all of you guys. We've got a special treat, though. We've got the one and only Ian Hartitz here in the house. His first time on the show. Ian, we're so excited to have you. How's it going?
Great. I'm sorry I'm not as funny as the great Cooter Doodle, but I still do share Amanda's love for Rashid Shaheed. So we got something going still.
Perfect. I knew when you were coming in that we could still help her and just say, we're going to say Rashid Shaheed 3 times. That's what she asked for. So I feel like we can hit that easily, really easily.
Had a nice catch the other day, getting the social media love. And remember, if the social media team didn't post about it, did it ever really happen?
No, literally no. How's it going? Let me ask you this. Let me start here. How many underdog drafts have you already done this summer? It's June 5th. People are like, I can't believe you guys are drafting. And we're like, no, yeah, we know we're sickos. But you, especially between you and Pete, how many are we at right now?
Underdog, probably 50, 60.
Okay.
DraftKings, so I get in those streets as well, about 30 or 40. So look,
Nice.
I'm trying to, as much as I love Best Ball Mania and the chance to win $2 million, I kind of treat it like the lottery, Kendall, where it always just shocks me when the lottery gets to this, $1 billion, 900 million, and people are like, oh, now I need to go get these tickets. Now I need to invest in this circus. Like 100 million wouldn't change our life. Like 50 grand wouldn't be freaking awesome. So I'm slumming it, and any other provider that wants to offer the $3 contest, you can find Team Free Duke Johnson in those streets.
There we go. Just remember us when you eventually do win the $2 million. I've told Pete that since the day I met him. I'm like, hey, Pete, just remember us when eventually you're winning all that money. That's all I have to say here. So, Ian, we've got 4 quarters here coming up, and then, of course, an overtime once we get to it. So the first quarter is coming up. It is Did You Hear, presented by Bud Light. All right, Ian, to start things off, we're going through the latest news, and of course it's June, so it's a little bit light, but we did get some interesting quotes from Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans. I'm curious if you're worried about this, but did you hear that they are not concerned about CJ Stroud's limited throwing during spring practices? Now, this is due to, they said, quote, general soreness, Ian, in his shoulder. But when we get the news so early, like in June, it does have to make us pause for a second because he had such a horrible season last year for fantasy football. So what do you think about the news of him not throwing right now?
Certainly not ideal. I would love just to hear that CJ Stroud is throwing, since that's kind of his entire job as a professional quarterback. But as long as this is, again, just general soreness and truly nothing to worry about, then no, we shouldn't be overly concerned. I just hope the next update, Kendall, isn't just precautionary MRI. Who cares? Couldn't be. It's not a big deal, but we're just going to get one just in case. So that would be the concern. But hey, it's one of these things where maybe it'll be a good reminder for Houston to protect this man, all right? Because we saw what happened at Arrowhead when it end of the season. We saw really throughout the entire year just how bad that offensive line made everything, go in Houston. So I know they did make at least an effort to switch people around now. If, PFF grades are something you like to lean on, wouldn't say it necessarily improved the group of big uglies up front. But, long story short, no, I'm not overly concerned about this specific issue for Stroud, who, by the way, not sure if you guys have heard, QB 28 in fantasy points per game last season. I'm more concerned, Kendall, about, again, the lack of improvements Houston made at the offensive line.
I mean, sacked 52 times, second most in the NFL when you look at it behind, Caleb Williams, but you are going to catch the stray here. And then he was pressured on 38.6% of his dropbacks, which was the second most according to Next Gen Stats. So that's the one thing I look at, Ian, when I talk about CJ Stroud and I say, man, it can't be as bad as last season, right? That's just something that I look at when we're doing our rankings and stuff. But then I say, how much closer is he going to be to that top 10 quarterback finish? It feels like, Ian, it might be somewhere in the middle, because I agree with you. I don't know if they necessarily did enough this offseason to fix the offensive line, to kind of fix all those problems. Yes, he still has a good amount of weapons there, but it feels like maybe he'll fall right in the middle. I'm not ready to say that he's going to go back to being the quarterback that we saw in 2023, though. I think maybe it's just one of those things where, maybe we're drafting him at his floor right now, but he's going to have to prove it to us pretty quickly.
And again, we watched those games. I'm not trying to say the sophomore slump was entirely on CJ Stroud, but it is curious to me how little kind of, grief we give some of these quarterbacks. Similar thing with Caleb Williams, where, hey, guess what? Year one that was just all CJ Stroud being great, Kendall, okay? Year two, that was not CJ's fault. That was Bobby Slowick's fault. That was the offensive line's fault. Again, we just tend to make these excuses when, probably in reality, like most things, truth lies somewhere in between. So there is a reason why we have, CJ Stroud ranked more like QB 18, QB 19, not all the way closer to 32. But again, if you are going to be more of the pocket statue-esque passer that CJ Stroud is, at least in terms of not racking up a bunch of yards on the ground, you need to be pretty darn elite throwing the football. So hopefully Christian Kirk and, the Iowa State Cyclones wide receivers are ready to step it up as well.
We'll see. But now we have to just make sure, Ian, that he's good to go for week 1. So just pay attention to it. Don't make, if you're listening, don't say, I'm not going to draft him now. But it is something where in the beginning of June, then we're still talking about it in August. That's where we get a little bit concerned with CJ Stroud. And again, you can check out those rankings. We're going to be talking about him all day over at fantasylife.com. So next up, Ian, did you hear Jonnu Smith? What are we doing here, Ian? So this is the thing I love about June. Like, we can just take anything and roll with it. But Jonnu Smith wasn't going to get traded originally. And now he might potentially be traded to none other than the Arthur Smith Steelers. So here's the thing. Pittsburgh has, I guess, renewed conversations with the Miami Dolphins for tight end Jonnu Smith. This is per Adam Schefter, came out with a tweet just a couple of days ago. Do you think he gets traded? And what does it mean? Like, let's start with what it means for Jonnu Smith as a whole. What do you think here?
I just think Johnny wants to get paid because he just put up top 5, worst case, top 6 numbers, if you want to be specific, and everything. Counting numbers, also yards and targets per route run. Like, this dude was freaking legit last year. We even saw what he did in Atlanta, and as we saw, Kyle Pitts really just struggled to get anything going last year. Arthur Smith maybe knows a little bit more ball than us in the fantasy community want to throw his way. So even the whole Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier thing, I mean, some of the, again, disrespect towards Arthur Smith, it's not like people go, oh my gosh, like, what was your schematic decision there? Like, what is wrong with this guy? It just comes down to, we want the guys we drafted really early in fantasy to get more touches. But, I don't really blame NFL coaches for not always being too worried about that. But with Jonnu in particular, look, he's only making the 32nd most, dollars per year right now in the NFL. Miami really doesn't have anyone else in that tight end room to speak of. Bunch of former undrafted free agents, Pharaoh Brown, who's, getting up there in age at this point. So I think Jonnu is honestly just trying to leverage, similar to what Terry McLaurin is doing right now as well, leverage a career year into getting a few more dollars. And who's to say that's a bad move? So clearly Arthur Smith, wants to do everything he can to get maybe his long lost son. Maybe that's what's going on here. But at the end of the day, I don't know why. Like, look, if you're looking at the Steelers offense, if you add Jonnu, I think it helps because Jonnu's a good football player, but you got Pat Freiermuth, you got Darnell Washington. Like, I don't think it's a needle-moving move in Pittsburgh. So, again, I don't blame Jonnu for wanting more money, but it is pretty hilarious that it's Arthur Smith, of all people, who once again is banging at the door trying to get his guy back.
It's because we can't have anything nice here, Ian. We're just now we're going to have to, it's going to loom over us and we're going to say, is he still a top 10 tight end in our fantasy rankings? Like, if he goes to Arthur Smith and whoever, by the way, people, just everyone remember, they don't have a quarterback yet. And it's it's June 6th. Like, that's the thing. They don't have a quarterback yet. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do get that deal done, where he gets moved, because I know if we look at it from the Dolphins perspective, maybe we can look at Jalen Waddle. We can look at Tyreek Hill again and say, okay, at least they're not going to funnel targets through Jonnu Smith again. And of course, Achane is going to be as involved as ever, just like we saw last season. But that's the one thing with him is, like, he's one of our top tight ends in our rankings. He had the career high in targets, 111. He had 88 catches. He finished overall, I believe, PPR fantasy scoring tight end 4 and then tight end 5 in fantasy points per game. So he was incredible. But it is interesting, Ian. Do you move him up or down? Let's just play this game. If he is, let's say we get the news tomorrow, goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so again, have no quarterback, and still, that's kind of like a little bit crowded as well. Do you move him up or down in your rankings?
Oh, Jonnu definitely goes down. I mean, again, for him to do what he did last year, to literally lead this offense with Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Devon Achane in receptions. I mean, I see him going to an offense that's not going to throw the football as much. I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a downgrade from Tua at this point. I think Arthur Smith, is also a downgrade from Mike McDaniel and everything they do there as well. So again, real life helper for Pittsburgh, and maybe even Jonnu for sure. But again, just really tough to wrap your mind around him being in a better situation in Pittsburgh. I do think it is going to be Rodgers there, though. soon enough, Kendall. We actually have
Yeah,
the
it has to
People's
be.
Insider, Ricky, the guy with the dog profile picture.
Yes.
I know people are still mad about the Brandon Ayuk, saga that went on there. But look, Ricky, unlike a lot of, alleged insiders out there, actually goes out on a limb before agents, text these reporters and say it's okay to, say this now. So per Ricky, Panda Watch, Aaron Rodgers Watch should be wrapping up shortly before training camp in July. I think, Aaron probably just hanging out, doing a little ayahuasca, didn't want to exactly go to the OTA stuff.
Darkness retreats. It's Aaron Rodgers. Like, if we believed anything less than him wanting to be like a center of attention all the way up until July, maybe when training camp starts, come on. We know this man. We know that was going to happen. But keep an eye out for sure. Jonnu Smith maybe going to your favorite offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith. So we're gonna figure that out. Next up here, I don't know if this moves the needle enough for you, but I did want to just bring up, again, it's June. J.K. Dobbins is visiting with the Broncos this week. So just a little bit curious. I mean, it's been quiet for him on the free agency front. I don't think we ever expected teams to just be knocking on his door day in and day out, but he is going, according to a ton of NFL media, he's meeting with the Broncos. He's met with the Broncos on Thursday, going to dine with Denver officials, is what the report said. So I don't know. It more is a question of really Julio McLaughlin, Audric Estime, even to that extent, Ian, does that move the needle for you at all? Because we know RJ Harvey is going to be the RB1 in this offense, but does that kind of move the pecking order a little bit for you?
I mean, I'm sure someone's got to take word. No, this is actually a good thing for RJ Harvey and these other players, but I don't think it's ideal. You're adding another guy into the backfield that I understand isn't going to be running, the fastest speed of any running back, at a 50-yard dash at this point in his career. But it's still a guy who we saw lead that Chargers group and still look pretty good more times than not last year. Okay. It's almost like that Austin Eckler, he had that 13-mile-per-hour run against the Packers in 2023. And everyone focused on that. Everyone's focusing on Dobbins, getting hawked down against the Raiders in week 1 or whenever it was after he has this big run. When, again, we just don't always hold that against other running backs. Last year, Kendall, per next-gen stats, J.K. Dobbins actually reached a faster top speed than Travis Etienne and Kyren Williams, but I don't hear any concerns about those guys all of a sudden not being good football players ahead of 2025. So he was actually 10th in next-gen stats, rushing yards over expected per carry. Okay. Yeah, maybe my Columbus, Ohio buy a little bit here. But again, there's J.K. Dobbins, there's Nick Chubb, all right? Those are the two running backs still in the market where I'm not trying to say they're studs or even as good as they used to be or anything at this point. But if a team feels the need to bring them in and does accordingly throw them a few $1 million, it's not ideal. Dwayne and Freeman, they're going to be updating their projections. And I'm telling you what, it's not going to cause Harvey, Estime, or Jaleel to go up in the ranks.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's fair. And I will say that all that to say, we still love RJ Harvey. You and I are very much in lockstep with the RB24 is our rankings right now. And again, those are going to change, week in and week out until week 1 starts. But I know, when you look at it, you're right. It doesn't do anything it's not good for any running back group. But I will say, only season with the Chargers, the career high, you mentioned it, 905 rushing yards, 13 games, 153 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. Maybe Denver's just looking at it and saying, okay, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, we just need to get some more bodies in there. So we'll see if that makes it work. Look at us, Ian. It's like you've been here forever. We're under the time, swings on their ears, telling us to get going. It's like you're a natural here. So we're going to continue on. That was Did You Hear, presented by Bud Light. All right, fantasy football fans, sure, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it, and all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Continuing on here, we are going through rankings versus consensus. And again, as we talk about rankings throughout the entire show, you guys can go and check those out at fantasylife.com. Make sure while you're there, you subscribe to that newsletter and check out all of our articles that are 100% free. Ian, I'm doing rankings this year. And, as much fun as it is, it's so funny that the thing that I was told when I first started was that I had at least 3 people tell me my favorite thing ever in my life was when I didn't have to do rankings anymore. And I just think that that's hilarious. I was like, oh, welcome to the ranking street. So your favorite thing ever is that you didn't have to do them anymore. But it's fun. I love it.
It's such a grind, though. I can see why
It
people
is.
would say that. But at the end of the day, we are lucky enough to be in a position making some money, basically analyzing
Hmm.
fantasy football. It is our full-time job. So good for us to need to do this. I will say, though, I mean, just
Exactly.
what I've noticed, Kendall, it's real easy to get your rankings, in line, May, June. Oh, okay, I feel this way, I feel that way. Once you're in those live drafts, all right, that's when they're really going to start changing because you got to finally put your money where your mouth is and decide just how
Hmm.
much you actually do love any given player.
I think that's the funniest part is that I'll get done because you're right. It was pretty nice to be able to get, May, June. You're like, okay, this is pretty locked in right now until training camp starts. And then we get a little bit more info on the depth charts and where these players kind of sit. But then you go into the underdog drafts and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I don't actually really like Tyreek Hill as
Right.
much as I think I do. I'm like, oh, I can't do it. So it makes you go back to the spreadsheets and you're like, okay, I have to change all this around. But one of the ones that I think is going to be really interesting, Ian, I think this whole offseason, whether you're a drafter that does a ton of drafts or someone just coming in for 2 or 3, Christian McCaffrey is going to be a big question. And that's one where just a couple months ago, I remember Adam Rodas and I on Sirius XM saying, hey, he's going at the turn, he was going in the second round. Now I think he's crept up back into the first round of underdog drafts. So you can go and check out that underdog ADP. But right now for you and your rankings, you can see it on the screen. You have him RB5 and then our consensus rankings RB7. So what makes you a little bit higher on Christian McCaffrey than others?
I think everyone, pretty much the industry, is going to have the same top three: Bijan, Saquon, Jameer Gibbs. But after that, Kendall,
Mhm.
I've gone so back and forth on some of these guys. Right now, I am leaning towards CMC because, he is the best running back ever in terms of PPR points per game. And again, just even last year, once he returned from this injury, you had Jordan Mason. I know he had a little bit of a shoulder injury at that point, but really proved to be someone that, again, they could rely on perhaps more so than the past RB2s behind McCaffrey. And Shanahan was still comfortable enough in CMC to give him that every down workload. So again, could that change? Perhaps, but now no Deebo Samuel. You could argue that CMC is actually looking at the biggest workload of his career here in San Fran inside an offense that needs him more than ever. So again, situation where I am not a doctor, believe it or not, everybody, but I do have some fantasy friends who are, and it does seem like, again, we've had enough time to recover from the Achilles tendonitis and from the PCO injury to feel good about CMC being ready to go. And again, difference between being injury prone and being actively injured. Now, I would not fault anyone for, unfortunately, listening to Kyle Shanahan not make a big deal about the injury last August. Again, always sucks when coaches do that. But again, I just think when CMC is healthy, it's a situation where we might be ranking him, or, whoever, maybe you are ranking him as RB7. But once we get to those week one rankings, good luck naming more than a few guys you're going to have ahead of him. So right now, drinking the Kool-Aid, getting the higher upside guy. I will say, Kendall, as I was, just prepping for the show, I do wonder if there's just a case to be made that first 2 rounds in the draft, just don't even mess around with the old guys, all right? You're going to miss sometimes, obviously Derrick Henry does his thing every year, but maybe there is something to be said about, just take the Leonardo DiCaprio, kind of rule to fantasy football. If you're over 25, I don't want you. What say you?
That's one of the things that I go back and forth on too, Ian, because I think everyone loved Derrick Henry last season and it worked out. And then there was another part of me where, people were saying, well, he's getting older, come 2025. And I say, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't want to be the person, especially if we talk about Derrick Henry. I'm never going to be the person that's going to try and predict when his fall off comes. Cause I've written this before. Like, it feels like Derrick Henry could just keep going until the wheels fall off or until he says, yeah, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to retire. Christian McCaffrey has those injuries with him. But the other part of me, Ian, with CMC right now that I'm having a hard time, with the rankings going back and forth is you're right. Like he didn't play last season. And so now he's got basically that season, in 2024 where he's rehabbing, he's coming in, he's going to have this full off season of rehab work as well. So there's another part of me that I say, okay, he should be fully healthy. And it's Christian McCaffrey in an offense that we always kind of want a piece of. You've always said how, sturdy Brock Purdy has been. Like he has just been so consistent in the fantasy point department, and people will always look at him and say, oh, system quarterback, whatever. But you are not going to be, you're not going to be sad if you have him on your fantasy team. So for CMC, his passing game involvement, his just involvement in this offense, that's why he's always kind of going to be that top guy. But I do see Ian the other side where people are like, I don't even want to chance it. He's going to get hurt, and people got screwed last year. They can't forget that. It's going to be in the back of their minds.
we only have this thought about certain guys, and CMC is one of them. But like
Yes.
Jonathan Taylor has missed more games due to injury in the last 3 years than Christian McCaffrey. And I don't hear people, exactly holding that against JT and him being a second round pick. So again, I admit, like, who is more likely to miss time this year due to an injury, Christian McCaffrey or Jahmyr Gibbs? Like, yeah, I do think it's CMC. It's not this, Jahmyr Gibbs is at 0%, CMC is at 100%, probably a little bit somewhere in the middle. So again, it's one of these tough things to really quantify and measure. And because of that, we end up kind of going all in or all out on it. So for right now, all in on CMC, but I know we're about to talk about, Ashton Genty here in a little bit as well. Yeah. Man, these RBs 4 through 7, 8 even, I've been kind of flipping them throughout the offseason.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, I'm just going to try and get exposure to most. And I'm right in the middle still with Christian McCaffrey. So ask me in July, and then I will probably, once we get the best shape of his life tweets, Ian, that's when I'm going to be fully in. I'm going to be like, perfect. He's in the best shape of his life. They never lie about that. I'm all in on CMC.
Until I see a slow motion training camp video of him catching a pass in warmups. Like, do you see this TreVeyon Henderson one? Again, you can love TreVeyon Henderson, but like legit seeing people unironically being like, oh my God, catching downfield passes. There's no one there. We're warming up. Calm down.
Exactly.
Touch some grass. Please.
Exactly. My favorite one that I always retweet every single year, and I don't think people know it's a joke, but I've retweeted the same Jackson Smith and Jigba catch from 2 years ago in training camp now. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter. It's the same. It's the same video. It always makes me laugh. I'm hoping that though, Ian, if we're talking best shape of his life, and maybe we do get a little bit more social media love for Kyler Murray, this is one where I feel so gross, but I'm kind of back in, and I hate it. And again, it doesn't feel great when I look at him, and he's probably one that I'm going to continue moving throughout the offseason. But original rankings, I had him QB8. Our consensus is QB10. I do still believe, because of the rushing upside, Ian, right? This is a guy that can give us that upside that we always want to chase in fantasy football. And it wasn't necessarily pretty last year. I'm concerned with the connection that he just doesn't seem to have with Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm worried about all of it. But then the other part of me that likes to be optimistic is that I hear him say, I was never 100%. I was still feeling that injury. I didn't trust myself in running situations. And there were times, Ian, during some of those games where I would be watching and I'd just be like, there's a lane. Like, just go. And he just did not decide to do that. And I know the height conversations have always kind of been around. I know you and Dwayne McFarland have talked about that a little bit. But for right now, QB8, only because I do believe hopefully that connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. gets stronger. He's a talented individual. We know that they're going to continue targeting Trey McBride, and he was such an asset last year. So I'm just hoping he just uses his legs a little bit more this season.
Yeah, and I do think that, if we just kind of took away the player names and just kind of laid out the archetypes that all these guys are, their statistical profiles and all that, Kyler would be someone that I'd probably rank higher than where I have him right now. So, maybe a hat tip to you there, K-Dog. I should be a little bit higher on Mr. Murray. But it's one of these things where the last 2 years he's finished as a QB9 and the QB12 in fantasy points per game. Not killing you, albeit not exactly, reaching some of those heights we saw when he was paired with DeAndre Hopkins in 2020 and 2021. But with Kyler and honestly Marvin Harrison Jr., I just have to ask myself, like, why is this going to change? And I know you brought up, Kyler said that he didn't feel right for, portions of last season, maybe even more of the year. But man, when we also have Jonathan Gannon saying last August that Kyler was feeling leaps and bounds better than he did in 2023, it's like, okay, so you guys were kind of lying to us before last year, but now you're telling the truth. Okay, now Kyler wants to run more. Now this is going to happen when, again, we haven't changed the OC. We haven't changed really anything to go into this projection. So I was surprised to find because, when he came back in 2023, like he was scrambling around immediately, and he actually registered more runs in the season coming back directly from the ACL, over 20 miles per hour, than he did all of last season. So again, maybe he wasn't right, but it's this weird thing. Javonte Williams gets this too, and now I guess Kyler, like the idea that, okay, you need to be an extra year removed from the injury, just 17 more games of taking punishment from NFL defenses, that's really going to make your knee feel better down the line. So again, Kyler, a little bit better pass touchdown luck. I think he could, certainly get there. Is an example of a guy you can buy a little bit closer to his floor than his ceiling. So not completely against you, but also, Kendall, not someone I'm exactly going out of my way for in every draft.
Yeah, that's why I say it feels gross. Like he even, like it just, I say it wasn't like amazing It really wasn't, but it's still a QB 12 finish. That was basically where you were drafting him as well. He was going, right outside the top 10 and then finished with career high 7.3 yards per carry, even though it was a career low in rushes per game. So that was also interesting too. I look at him and I just say he has spent almost his entire career, I think, as a top 12 fantasy quarterback. So even if you're looking at him at that 10, 11, 12 spot, he's probably going to pay that off, but it's difficult to see. You're right. Is he actually okay? Like, Kyler, can you let us know? Are you all right? Just, send us a message and hopefully he does say yes.
And Kendall, you just said 7.3 yards per carry. I wasn't watching Kyler last year going, oh man, look how slow he is. I was more like with you, like, oh, it's kind of weird he's not running more. This dude had 2 or 3 chunk touchdowns where he's throwing up the number 1 at midfield as he's about to, run past everyone. So again, one of these things were like, was he really not feeling good, or was it kind of like in retrospect, like, so we'll see what happens.
I hope he wasn't feeling good. That's what I'm hoping for. Let's go through a little bit lower on Ashton Genty here, Ian, and your ranking for him. Your ranking RB7, again, fantasylife.com is where you guys can go and check these out. Consensus RB4. What do you think of Ashton Genty?
My issue with Genty has nothing to do with Ashton Genty. It's just the Raiders offense compared to every other running back that we are taking this high, okay? I look at the Ravens. I look at the Eagles. I look at the Falcons, the Lions, the Dolphins, the 49ers as well. I just think they're all better offenses than what we're going to see with the Las Vegas Raiders. So yes, Chip Kelly, we can go back and talk about his pace stats from over a decade ago. Never mind that he ran one of the slowest offenses in the country last year at Ohio State. So again, it just seems like one of these things where we have this with rookies where we just hype them up for half of the offseason, and for good reason. The NFL draft is cool. It's fun. Ashton Genty obviously is a great prospect, but I just feel like when we have pretty similar volume in these top 7 running backs, okay? Mm-hmm. Also offenses, I've talked about the Raiders being the lowest one. So we're just really betting on Ashton Genty being a better talent than guys like Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. Because to me, again, the offensive environment is worse for Genty. So you're just saying he is going to be that much better than, objectively great NFL running backs already. Maybe he is. Again, feels weird to be like, oh man, he's my RB7 in the entire NFL. Hasn't played a snap. I'm down on the guy. But hey, that's the case.
That's what happens when you get the generational talent, description for you for the last few months. And people are like, well, generational talent, he's going to give us a generational fantasy season. I'm closer to you, honestly. I've got him at RB6, again, because I agree with you. As much as I love Geno Smith and shout out to him to be able to cook with a new offense, like I still just want to wait and see. Like, he is an accurate passer. This offense hopefully should get better. But putting that all on Ashton Genty, while I do think he's going to be able to help them, especially at the goal line, like they were awful. 23rd in red zone plays, 29th in red zone run rate last season per PFF. Like, it was pretty bad. So it's a good highlight, Ian, when you just say, hey, this is a bad offense. Yes, I think he's going to be that player that does help them win more games. But I'm just being a little bit more cautious there, especially with a name, like you said, with Achane over there. So I'm way closer with you than than overall consensus. The one that I've also had another problem with, Ian, is Tyreek Hill. And I don't know if I just need to wait and see if Jonnu Smith is going to be on the move. I'm still holding out. Like, I don't know, Ian, do we still believe that Tyreek Hill is going to be on this team? That's also something that I'm just waiting and seeing. Like, I just want to wait and see, because I feel like this Super Bowl window is closed for this team. And I don't think that that's a hot take or a hot thing to say. Like, it just feels like it might be over. They pushed all their chips into the middle and it didn't work, and that's okay. But for Tyreek Hill, I have him overall wide receiver 14, and it's not a crazy jump, but we have him overall wide receiver 11. And I just get a little bit more worried about Tua Tagovailoa than I do Tyreek Hill. I still think Tyreek Hill has a ton of juice left in the tank, but them funneling targets Jonnu Smith's way, the involvement with Achane, hopefully Jalen Waddle's able to kind of come back to the player that we expect him to be. It just makes me a little bit more nervous to put him closer to the top 10 than I am like right now with the wide receiver 14, 15 kind of ranking.
I hear you, but right now, just based on some of this early ADP, wide receiver 17 right now, Kendall. I feel like some of his concerns being baked in. It's not like the guys going next to him are just completely devoid of their own potential red flags. So we have Garrett Wilson, we have Marvin Harrison Jr., who, yes, they are younger, but let's not act like they're just in these amazing situations. So buzzer be damned going off over here. Tyreek Hill is one of these guys where, again, I can see ranking him a little bit lower because the age red flag. And yes, we have an elderly receiver showing signs of decline after last year. That's not ideal. we're also just 1 year removed from him leading the freaking NFL in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. So round 3, I will say, certain builds and stuff, you find yourself, you took Genty in round 1. Oh my gosh, then you got, CMC somehow fell to you in round 2 or something like that. You need a wide receiver in round 3. Tyreek does profile as that guy for me. We could be looking up halfway through week 1 going, oh yeah, Tyreek Hill is going to get 160 targets this year in an offense that still has been far more good than bad over the last 3, and I just got him for a 3rd round pick.
Exactly. That's the thing. I know I'm going to be going back and forth on him. And then I look and I say, okay, he dropped, 1.75 yards per route run. Huge dip from just his overall career. And I'm just like, why? Like, love you, Jonnu Smith, but can we not do that again? And it's also the other thing of Tua, Ian, the Tua situation when he missed 5 games last season, that just doesn't ever seem like we can look at that offense and be like, oh yeah, Tua's going to be there for, 15 games. It's just not going to happen. That's the other part with it.
We got Zach Wilson now. Backup, right?
You know what? Thank goodness. Never mind. What am I talking about, Ian? It's Tyreek Hill season. What are we doing? All right, continuing on. You heard the buzzer here. We're going to continue on through some time travelers waiver wire watch. But before we do that, we're hearing from our friends over at Bud Light.
Check out the new whip.
Tight.
Fully custom.
How many Bud Lights can you fit in that puppy?
As many Bud Lights as it takes.
That's a lot of Bud Lights. You have to give me one of those.
All right, continuing on through Time Travelers Waiver Watch. And again, we're going through this, Ian. We're not here to predict injuries. We are never going to do that. But there are certain scenarios where maybe they happen during the 2025 season. We have to figure out, maybe who are some guys that we're looking at on the waiver wire? Who are some guys that are maybe late round sleepers that we should be targeting in these drafts? So these are big names that we might not see after week 1. So let's start things off with Travis Kelce. So Travis Kelce isn't getting hurt. I'm letting you know that right now. But Travis Kelce, Ian, has decided to start a dating show with, girlfriend, you might know her, name's Taylor Swift, and they just decide we can make way more money doing this than me playing football. Why am I playing football? We just lost the Super Bowl. I don't want to do that. He starts a dating show with Taylor Swift and he decides to retire. Who are you looking at on the waiver wire? Or who are some guys that we should look at late in drafts that maybe we could pick up?
I know these are supposed to be unrealistic scenarios, but I feel like that maybe has decent odds of happening before too long, K-Dog. So I would just say, this would be Noah Gray's season there, but we got to be careful when it's not a running back and we see a pass catcher kind of exit the equation. It's not the same now the backup's going to have the exact same role. I do think guys like Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, if healthy, likely more Kelce's targets would go to them than Noah Gray all of a sudden becoming this, 130 target per year tight end. But that said, they did give him a 3-year, $18 million extension last September. He's been in the system for a long time. And, they added Jared Wiley in the draft last year, but not too big a competition to believe that, Noah wouldn't be that next guy up. And just having watched him for a little bit, he's done some good things. He's got that same sort of, it looks like he's been playing, behind Travis Kelce for half a decade because he has that same sort of feel, sitting in the zone, seems to be on the same page as Mahomes. And accordingly, had the second most touchdowns on the team last year, at least in terms of receiving. So Noah Gray would be the guy. Don't think we'd be ranking him as a weekly top 5 option or anything like that. But hey, top 12, top 13, we've seen worse guys do it.
I was hoping you would say Noah Gray because I was like, that's definitely the answer where if we're just looking down the depth chart, right, that's the next guy up. So if Travis Kelce does say, hey, you know what, it's just time. I'm going to do this dating show. I'm dating Taylor Swift and I don't need to play anymore. Peace out. I'm out. What about, let me throw you a name that I'm thinking hopefully, and again, we're just trying to predict the future here Ian, but Elijah Arroyo. I'm curious where you're at with him because he feels like someone that could go undrafted depending on how deep your league is or, how many sharp players you have in there for the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm trying not to be biased here. He's in kind of a group where it's a little bit crowded there. We can just say that they've got Kubiak now over there again, and we've seen him 4 different coaching staffs in each of the last 4 seasons, different variety every single time really of tight end rotations, but could be someone that's on the waiver wire where if they decide, hey, we don't actually need Noah Fant, we can save $9 million, I believe it is, or close to $9 million if we kind of just let him go. I know, I'm sorry, he's your guy. I just want to throw that name out there where it's like, hey, maybe he's someone that we should be looking at for some of these rookies that might go undrafted.
You're not wrong. And honestly, some of the stuff Kubiak was doing with his tight ends in New Orleans, I mean, I think the crazy stat that was out there the other day was like Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, and even Foster Moreau all outscored Dalton Kincaid last season. So sorry for the stray Dalton Kincaid. But yeah, I mean, it's a situation where Arroyo, certainly got that day 2 draft capital. I think that he honestly would have had a chance to go higher if he didn't have some of those collegiate injuries. And when you are looking for, again, the sort of tight end who can't take that step forward, you want that ability to stretch the seam, make some big plays. That's part of the reason why I've been, such a big Noah fan truther over the years, but maybe the young dog is here to take his job. So I will say, AJ Barner quietly is someone that they did trust, and he made it hard for Fant to really get going last year. So in today's NFL, if you have 2 tight ends really involved in your offense, really tough to still have one really good one in fantasy land. So Arroyo, again, does profile as the probably superior pass catcher, but we'll see if the blocking is good enough to take someone like AJ Barner off the field.
Yeah, and I think Saubert's the one that eventually gets cut. If they're not going to go in there with 3 guys with the fullback. So that's the one. If you're looking at someone who they might potentially cut, it's probably going to be him. All right, next up, Tyreek Hill ran so fast, Ian. He is not hurt. He ran so fast. He is stuck in a time vortex for 2025. You don't get to use him after week 1, folks. I'm so sorry. Where are you going? Who are you looking for on the waiver wire?
We're hyping up Jalen Waddle. I just hope the dude would be ready to go ahead and, do it. Now, he's not going to be on the waiver wire, obviously, but it is one of these weird things where, again, you try to kind of piece through what went wrong for these guys last year. And for Tyreek, it's like, all right, well, the wrist injury, it's not like he was dropping 20 passes out there. Like, I'm a little bit skeptical of that. Jalen Waddle was apparently fully healthy until week 14, week 15 last year. And then I think he had a knee injury. So I understand Tua, being hurt. Obviously, that whole offense kind of fell out of favor. But really, to me, a more concerning year from Jalen Waddle than Tyreek Hill, because, again, really can't point to anything with why it just went so bad. But, this is a good time, Kendall, to bring up the star, the underrated star of the 2024 season, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who caught more touchdowns than Tyreek and Waddle combined. And I know all these nerds in fantasy football want to say touchdowns are variance, touchdowns are luck, follow the yards, whatever. Scoring touchdowns is a skill. There's a reason why it's so much harder in the red zone, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is very good at it. So I do think that this would be a situation where, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, waiver wire pickup of the week. Oh my God, this is great. Where are we going to rank him? Like wide receiver 45 or something like that. So I would caution, again, with being too excited in this scenario, because, again, it's like with Kelsey leaving the equation in Kansas City, probably more likely than not that guys like Tyreek, John, if he's still on the team, even Devon Achane, who led all running backs and catches from the slot or out wide last season, I think more likely than not the target share just kind of increases for them.
I like that. At least you didn't say Marquez Valdes-Scantling. That's the one where I was going to cringe and be like, Ian, please, we can't do this again. But bringing up Nick Westbrook-Ikhine in the beginning of June, it's absolutely beautiful. That's on everyone's bingo card. All right, next one, Bijan Robinson. This is a fun one because, by the way, Bijan Robinson has some amazing merch. So this could be actually real. We talked about this before the show started. But Bijan Robinson decides to pursue his mustard company, Bijan Mustardson, full-time after a crushing 73-7 loss to the Bucs in week 1. Also, Ian, you brought up before the show, he wants to be an actor. So again, this could be on the table, but for all Bijan Robinson managers, so sorry, he's not available to you after week 1. Where do you go? Who do you look for on the waiver wire?
I would first of all go ahead and order some of his mustard, because my local farmer's market does have some really good brats. I was growing some up last weekend. Nice. So shout out Bijan. Appreciate that, man. But no, this one would be pretty cut and dry. And honestly, out of all the backups we've named, this would be the guy where I would be advising, go ahead and blow the bank on the rest of your fab here. And it would be with Tyler Algier, who, man, it's one of these things where we always, Arthur Smith, why are you not giving Bijan Robinson more touches? And I get it. Bijan is the man, but everything Tyler Algier has done in his short career has really been awesome. And if you want to look at their stats side by side last year, I know Bijan had more carries, okay, larger workload, a bit harder to, again, maintain that high-end efficiency, but Algier is better in yards after contact per carry, explosive run rate, tackles avoided per carry, and literally was right next to him in terms of yards per carry and yards, over expected. So Algier this year, I'm knocking on wood, Kendall. You guys can see me do it. Tyler Algier, 586 combined carries and targets in his 3-year career. Zero, Kendall, drops or fumbles. This guy is Mr. Reliable. He can work across all 3 downs, and the mainstream media needs to put some respect on his name. So, Bijan, shout out to your mustard tour. That is a fantastic T-shirt. But Tyler Algier is an S-tier handcuff in the year 2025.
I need that shirt. First of all, if you see that, no one go and get it because they're low. It's low quantity, but if you want to go and check out this shirt, it's absolutely fantastic. It's BijanMustardSyn.com. We were not kidding about the mustard industry with Bijan. Like, that is over there, so you make sure and go check it out. I literally, Ian, on my rundown, I wrote, Ian will talk about Tyler Algier, and then I just left it blank because I know that you. I mean, you do. Yeah, you always say like Tyler Algier remains an elite handcuff option. So if you are in those deeper leagues, I think that's just so important, and we always tell everyone, but just a reminder, make sure you go get those handcuff guys, because if you didn't, like last season with Christian McCaffrey, it was absolutely brutal, and I know we went through like 3 different running backs during that time, but Tyler Algier, he doesn't get enough love. Except when, Ian, you're talking about him, then he does get enough love, but you just got to remember him. So here's hoping that none of these happen. We get these guys for the full season, but just in case, we have to be ready for it. We're going to continue on, Ian. We've got Mary Start Cut, and we've got this on a wheel because this is Untitled, and we always like to have a little bit of fun. So who would you take among these RB2s and wide receiver 2s? So we're going to spin the wheel. We've got all of the names there on the screen. I'm going to make sure, Ian, because we're professionals, that we remember the name that it lands on. So Marvin Harrison Jr.
Marv, okay.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
By the way,
for
too.
one.
Fourth quarter, gotta make some plays.
You're ready to go. So we've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Omarion Hampton. So this is going to be, again, Mary Start Cut. So Marvin Harrison Jr., Omarion Hampton, and then we're going to go with, James Conner. That's a pretty good group.
Ooh.
So MHJ, Omarion Hampton, James Conner, Mary Start Cut. Where are you going to go?
I'm sorry, I'm cutting Marvin Harrison Jr. Like we talked about with Kyler, what has changed this year? I know players can get better from year 1 to year 2, but Trey McBride's still going to be seeping up the targets. No one liked the way Marv was used last year for good reason. It was all very low percentage, slot phase and stuff. He wasn't creating much separation. Quentin freaking Johnston was, someone who actually outscored him in terms of total PPR points. So cutting Marv and give me Hampton, who looks like he's going to be poised to take over this backfield sooner rather than later from not old man, but Najee Harris. I think we can just say that. And then James Conner, someone who basically is emerging as the Tyler Lockett of running backs, just always beating his ADP. And another one of these guys where, we can rank him RB22 as much as we want. You're going to have him inside that top 15 by the time week 1, week 2 comes along. So give me these running backs, especially in that PPR, Kendall.
No, I like it. I think for my, this is difficult. I think I'm going to keep Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm not going to like it. And I'm going to cut James Conner, even though I love James Conner. And I'm with you, Ian. What are we doing every single year? I look at his ADP and I say, what did I miss? Is he injured? No. Is he set back at all? No. So it just blows my mind. I'm with you on Omarion Hampton. I wrote up, for our magazine that's coming out here pretty soon for the Fantasy Life magazine, which is going to be absolutely amazing. Everyone has to go and check them out. But I was so excited for Najee Harris for 2 weeks. And then I was like, oh, dang, that stinks. But it's still going to be okay. Omarion Hampton, I'm really excited to see him in that offense. But that's where I'm going to go with this one. So let's go back to the wheel. Let's see who else we can get here. So we just had Marvin Harrison Jr., Omarion Hampton, James Conner. So we are back to the wheel, Ian. It's the fourth quarter. Like you said, we're making moves here. Let's hope we get a wide receiver. Okay, Mike Evans. This is going to be a good one.
Mr.
So we got
1K.
Mike Evans. Oh, God, it's just every single year. We can't doubt the man. And then we've got your guy, DeAndre Swift. This is it's like the wheel knows that you're here. It says, you know what? Ian Hartitz is here and we're going to take his guys. And then, Tetaroa McMillan. All right. So between Tetaroa McMillan, Mike Evans, DeAndre Swift, Mary Start Cut, where are you going to go?
I guess I have to cut T-Mac because I know Mike Evans is old, but if we're just doing this for 2025, how can you go against Mike freaking Evans, who is aging like fine wine, Kendall? I mean, we talk about guys like Tyreek who maybe have their underlying stats, falling off year over year. Mike Evans, ESPN's open rate, just yards per route run, fantasy points per game. The dude is going up. It's freaking crazy. And again, it's just really tough for me to figure out why, other than just a random injury, it would be going south. So with T-Mac, obviously, Bryce Young played a lot better in the second half of last season, but I think we can all agree Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers certainly giving us a higher offensive, ceiling than what we're getting in Carolina for the time being. So give me Evans over T-Mac, and I got to start DeAndre Swift. I don't know why I'm on such an island with this, Kendall. Everyone just keeps expecting someone to come into Chicago and take his job. We have people saying, oh, there's a rumor the Bears wanted to trade up for Travion Henderson, and that's being used as a negative against DeAndre Swift. So apparently all the scheme and offensive line problems that were going on in Chicago last year only impacted Caleb Williams. None of that had anything to do with DeAndre Swift as well. So I understand his vision isn't ideal, but the dude has never played a season and finished as worse than the RB24. I really don't think first-year offensive coordinator Ben Johnson had a vendetta against him in Detroit. And even if he did, he wanted Jahmyr Gibbs instead, okay? And they've had the entire offseason to try to find a replacement, still yet to see it. So honestly, even if they did bring in a Dobbins or a Nick Chubb, that's a situation where they're probably going to be more so a thorn beside the Roschon Johnson in that David Montgomery role, if you will, than Swift playing that pass catcher role that, lest we forget, was his before Jahmyr Gibbs even became a thing in the first place. So again, cutting T-Mac, even though I hate it, I'll marry Mike Evans and I'll start the other Swift.
I like that. I'm with you on the whole thing, just because I was going to maybe keep Tetairoa McMillan just because he's supposed to be that beast, out there with, a Bryce Young, who this is the situation though, Ian, is as much as I want to believe, and I'm an optimistic person, but I'm like, how optimistic can we be about Bryce Young? Like, where does that mean if people say like, I'm really optimistic Bryce Young is going to continue turning it around? Does that make him a top 15 quarterback in fantasy football? Like, I don't think it does, but I still do believe, yes, he can get better. Tetairoa McMillan is a target that they desperately needed. Like, we could not go a whole nother season, and I love Adam Thielen, but we just could not do this, Ian. We couldn't do a whole nother year talking about Adam Thielen being his top target. So I love Tetairoa McMillan. I do target him in drafts. I know you love him as well. I mean, you have him, I think you're wide receiver 20, I believe, or really close in that range. So it's just one of those things where even if Bryce Young does continue to get better, like for you, Ian, does that put him in your top 15 quarterbacks? Does he make it there?
No, and honestly, like some of his fantasy points towards the end of the season, he randomly ran, I think, for like 5 touchdowns during the final 4 or 5 weeks. Yeah. And I just don't think that's going to be as sustainable as some of these other quarterbacks. So look, there are certain stats, like it's funny, I'm writing my Panthers team preview right now. If you look at Bryce during the second half of last year, you can paint a rosy picture. Take his PFF passing grade and his big time throw rate, throw it on a graph, and he's going to be up there with some great guys. But still pretty underwhelming in terms of, the EPA per dropback, yards per attempt, some more traditional passing stats, if you will. And just, again, the play style with which how he was winning, very high variance, a lot of, just again, kind of scrambled drill, throwing off his back foot. And it worked. And he made a lot of good plays, and that was great. But man, that bar, and this is not a short joke, but that bar was so low for Bryce Young after his first, 18 or so starts that, yeah, he played a lot better, but even his lot better was, a bit more close to league average than, something great.
Exactly. And that's, again, no hate to Bryce Young, please continue to do better. You've got Dave Canales over there. Like, I believe in that. And Tetairoa McMillan is just going to be funneled with target. Like, he's just going to be that guy for them, but still put DeAndre Swift up there, and you're going to pick DeAndre Swift almost every time. So let's see if can we go through one more here? Yeah, on the wheel. And let's see the last group that we get here for Mary Start Cut Wheel for 2025. We've got DJ Moore. Oh, another good one. All right. So DJ Moore, I swear, the wheel knows when you're here and is picking the hot button topics for you. We did Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's do Garrett Wilson. I see Garrett Wilson on the screen, so we're going to go Garrett Wilson because we could make this a wide receiver conversation. We did wow, the wheel just says, let me go. Who do you want, Alvin Kamara or T. Higgins?
We'll go Alvin Kamara. That's probably a tougher one. So
all right, let's do.
I'm going to go ahead.
Do those three.
I'm going to marry Garrett Wilson, the list of wide receivers with over 1,000 yards first 3 seasons, littered with just really superstars, honestly. And yes, guys, I've checked. Garrett would have hit those numbers even if he was, forced to stop the season at week 17. So not getting that extra aid. And hey, I am old enough to remember when, speaking of DJ Moore, Justin Fields helped them put up all kinds of big numbers in Chicago. And just like that Chicago Bears team really wasn't any target competition, just like what Garrett's looking at with the Jets as well. So marrying Garrett Wilson. I'm going to start Alvin Kamara again, put him up there with James Conner, put him up there with these other running backs who, yes, are getting a little bit longer in the tooth, but man, he's going to be a threat to rack up 300 plus combined rushes and targets. And that is just so hard to bust in fantasy football land. Going to have to cut DJ Moore because again, new offense that could lean a bit more run heavy. I know the running back room wouldn't necessarily dictate that, but based on what we saw in Detroit last few years, we got Rome Odunze, we got Luther Burden, we got Colston Loveland. A lot of target competition going around. Even if DJ Moore is the best of that group, kind of some wonky vibes going on in Chicago with him. Kendall, I would say, this entire offseason, a lot of people questioning his lack of effort on certain plays. I know there's an insider saying, DJ Moore came off the field a few times and was pretty much openly yelling about Caleb Williams. So again, don't love some of the, Juju Smith-Schuster going around here with DJ Moore, and just one of these issues where, again, when faced with two other very good talents in Garrett Wilson and Alvin Kamara, I'm just going to go ahead and lean towards them.
I've found myself when looking at DJ Moore and saying, okay, I don't necessarily want to pay that price, but I've found myself going back again to Rome Odunze, who I know a lot of us at Fantasy Life loved last season. And he was really high in just the rookie supermodel as well from Dwayne McFarland. I find myself going towards him, putting a little bit more on Luther Burden, even Colston Loveland. Like, I've just found myself, Ian, going to different guys other than DJ Moore and just saying, okay, if I do want a piece of this offense, if I do believe that the offensive line is 100 times better and Caleb Williams isn't going to be taking as many sacks, and they now have Ben Johnson, the guru of fantasy football for offenses, like, I want a piece of that. I've just found myself kind of waiting and saying, all right, DJ Moore, I don't necessarily need it. I'm going to all of these other three guys. And I'm curious if you like any of those other three as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the price point, it's been Rome. We keep doing our mock drafts over, which you guys can find over at fantasylife.com. Wrote up a review on it. I gave Kendall some love because she actually drafted Cam Scatterbo this time around.
Yes.
So good job by you. But again, it's one of those things where I don't feel like I'm going out of my way for Rome, but his ADP has gotten closer to that wide receiver 3 borderline. And when you're there, round 8, round 9, like all of a sudden it's Rome versus kind of the 49ers wide receivers or Jerry Jeudy types who, not saying they can't have a good year, but for me, Rome, I feel much more confident taking that, just leap of faith there versus DJ Moore next to some true ballers, in round 4.
Agree. All right, we're doing overtime. I've wanted to do this with you. We're doing Would You Rather here, Ian. We're going rapid fire. So I'm going to give you a ton of these scenarios. Rapid fire. Would you rather? We're going to start the first one. Would you rather have to draft Kyle Pitts all off season, every single time, or never drink a Kona Big Wave again?
Oh my God. No. Why?
I know. I told you it's specifically catered for you.
Okay. I love Big Wave too much. I guess we're drafting Kyle Pitts. Oh.
Kyle Pitts season. I love it. All right. Would you rather bet your house on Derrick Henry 1,750 plus rushing yards, or never have Ohio State beat Michigan again?
I'm betting the house.
1,750
I'll live with my mom
plus.
I'll live with my mom before I make that bet. You could have done a lot worse there. Yeah, betting the house, no problem.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Would you rather have to admit Sam Darnold is going to be good with the Seahawks, or never get to mention Cordero Patterson ever again?
Oh my gosh. I'll admit Darnold could be good with the Seahawks. Again, it's my only issues with Darnold. I know it's rapid fire, but Kubiak offense, nice deep, play action shots and stuff. I'm more worried about the offensive line and the fact that your deep receiver right now is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So unfortunately, we saw Darnold make some great freaking plays all of last season in a great offensive environment. I think that last piece is probably missing though right now in Seattle.
All right, let's do one more. Would you rather draft from the 101 in every best ball draft, or have Lily and Bruh pick against the Cowboys every time they do a pick 'em?
You know what? Lily's not great at her picks, so I'll go ahead and avoid getting the 101 in every single draft. I don't know what to do with that, though, Kendall. Guys, I make my dogs try to pick, again, these Thursday night games. Lefty Lily will not stop going left. I've tried moving both hands to that side. I need a solution.
It might be Bruh's time. Like, it might be time to just get both of them in there. Maybe she helps her out a little bit. Ian, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Untitled. As always, it is so much fun doing these shows with you. Everyone, make sure you go to fantasylife.com. Ian mentioned it, but he's doing previews for every single team in the NFL. So make sure you go and check those out. He's done a great job, as always. Fantasylife.com is where you can go and check out all those articles, 100% free. Sign up for the newsletter, also 100% free. Appreciate you, Ian. We'll see you here next time.